Hello my wonderful Coldplay fans, and in this video I'm going to review and give my honest thoughts and reaction to the new album, Music of the Spheres. So how this is going to work is I'm going to run down the entire album and give you my thoughts on each track individually. And at the very end I'm going to kind of just give you my final thoughts on the album as a whole. Now if you're new to this channel, I've been covering Coldplay content for a while now, and I continue to do so in the future, especially regarding this album. So if you haven't done so yet, I would encourage you to please subscribe. And now, without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so starting off with our very first track, we have Music of the Spheres, the title track of the album. Now, this song is kind of just an intro, right? It's not like a full-length song, it's kind of a short song actually. And it's interesting because this song really reminded me of some of their work with ghost stories. You know, when I think of like the middle of midnight, it has that kind of same ambiance to it. It starts off with all these like otherworldly sounds and is a little bit chaotic. And after thinking about that, it kind of reminded me of how the Greeks thought of the creation of the universe, how it was all born out of chaos. So to me, just personally, when I'm listening to this album, I like to think of that because it's kind of just all this chaos and all these different noises coming together to really birth this album. But then soon after all that noise kind of settles down, we have this bass part that really hits hard, and I think it's a little unexpected, so when you hear it for the first time, you really get startled by it, but kind of in a good way. And then near the end of the track, I just love how it has that rising sound, that synth, that kind of sounds like an alien spaceship, you know, taking off, or kind of like a laser powering up. It kind of just raises your hair a little bit and gets your heart pumping and just ready and excited for this album. Now, I just wanted to note that this is very different than what we saw from the last album, Everyday Life, that opening track, because with that, it kind of set the tone for a heavy, deep, and real conversation, and with this song, it kind of set the tone for an exciting journey through space. And then we go into our next track, Higher Power. Now, this song is very representative of this new age 80s kind of pop, right? It has those synths, those background vocals, the chord progressions are just very kind of this 80s feel, and even that snare and the offbeat with that kick just really is reminiscent of this 80s feel, but also has a new spin on it, so it's kind of like this new age 80s pop. Now, one thing about this song that I think is really underrated, and I don't hear people talk about it too much, but it's that bass. I think the tone of it and just the placement of it is just really nice. And it kind of brings everything together as far as the chord progressions go, the transitions between each section. I think the bass in this song is used and implemented so well. Now, the chorus in this song is super catchy. Now, it makes a lot of sense that they used this song for their first single because of that reason. You know, you're able to really market it and market that chorus because everyone's going to remember it and everyone's going to sing along with it. So I really appreciated the song for its ability to just get stuck in my head. Now, something that really stood out to me about this song was the final chorus, because it introduces this new melody on the chorus. And it's interesting because I think it's really effective in getting your attention and kind of just making you feel something different, something new, even though it's the very end of the song. You know, Chris is able to sing almost with a little bit more emotion as it gets kind of higher in his register. And this part overall kind of just reminded me of, in something just like this, how near the very end of the song they introduced this new chord progression. And I think those kinds of treats, those kinds of gifts at the very end of songs are just so pleasing, because it's like almost like a thank you for listening to the entire song. You know, here's a new melody, and I just appreciated that part of this song so much. And just overall, I was really pleased with the meaning of the song, because when I first heard about this title, this track, Higher Power, my mind went to, okay, this song's going to be about some deity or some godly thing, right? But it's actually about the higher power within us all. So it just has such a beautiful meaning and just a great sound, you know, it's very catchy, so I think this song just gets a huge thumbs up. And then we have Humankind, which starts off with this kind of like sequencer sound. It has like a lot of beeping and all that, and it really gives off this 80s vibe, just like Higher Power. And then as this song is being introduced, you start to hear this kick and snare that really gets you excited and really jumping, and then you hear this alien voice. Now, if you followed the lore ahead of time about this album, what it's all about, you actually have heard this voice before. This alien voice was heard before spelling out the alphabet of the Chaotican language, and it's not really clear exactly what they're saying in here. I didn't like decode it or anything, but I'm willing to bet it's probably just announcing the name of the song. Maybe it spells out Humankind. Now, if you're watching this and you decoded it yourself, feel free to leave a comment and brag, telling us what exactly it is saying. And like I said, it's probably just spelling out a certain phrase or just the title of the song. And then as the song progresses, it brings in this acoustic guitar, which is kind of the staple instrument, in my opinion, of this song, but it's really cool because it just makes you really happy and it makes you just wanna go for a run or something. Now, overall, this song just really reminds me of the music that we heard in the Viva La Vida era, and specifically it just reminds me of Lovers in Japan. But other than that, things that are similar to the Viva era were the drum beat and the fills, the chanting, the main melody was just similar to things that we heard in Viva, and the string synths just kind of collectively make this song sound like that. But also the acoustic guitar met with that constant beat just made this song feel like it was from back then. Now, just to talk about some of the lyrics, of course we have the chorus that says, "We're only human," which is obviously very fitting for the song and kind of just the overall tone of the song. But there's also a line that I wanted to bring up that says, "Today I had the strangest feeling that I belong." And I just thought that was just so unique and very kind of heartwarming. You know, it gives a sense of being lost, not being wanted, but I had the strangest feeling that, you know, I actually belong. It's just a very beautiful message. Now, the bridge was interesting because it was kind of abrupt and just very short, but I do think it helps the final chorus sound a little bigger, so it's effective at least in doing that. Now, the ending of the song kind of ends with this pulsar kind of sound, and honestly, I thought it was a little abrupt as well, but I do think it does add to the overall ending of the song pretty well. But overall, and kind of to my surprise, this was one of my favorite tracks on the album, and that's partly because of this nostalgia that it brought me back to the Viva era, but also just because it's a really feel-good song and it's just really upbeat. And then the next track, the transition track, is Alien Choir, and it's pretty much exactly what I expected from this song, just from the title, where there's this ominous space choir. But there was something very interesting about this small transition track that I wanted to bring up. It kind of has these sounds that eventually evolve into this E flat major chord, and then just in the very distant we hear this lowered seventh, which really reminds me of what we hear in Coloratura. Now, of course, that's the last track on this album, so I'll get to that in a little bit, but I think it's interesting that they use the same kind of technique in this song, in this short transition track, that's very similar to the final song on this album. And the other thing that I wanted to mention about this song is that it's interesting that Alien Choir comes right after Humankind. So I don't know if there's supposed to be that kind of juxtaposition between the two, but I thought it was interesting to note. And then we have the track Let Somebody Go. Now, the intro to the song starts off with this beautiful tone in this keyboard that I just thought was very heartwarming and really drew me in. Now, it's funny because, you know, just hearing some clips ahead of time, I thought this song was going to be a lot like Everglow, and it kind of was, but it actually really reminds me of Up in Flames off of Milo Zoloto. You know, it starts off with that click or that muted snare on 2 and 4, and then when Selena Gomez comes in, it has that nice beat and those deep bass tones that, again, really reminded me of Up in Flames. Now, I definitely think that this song stands on its own and it's not like a copy of that song, but I thought it was interesting to note because with everything that this album stood for and the fact that it's 10 years after Milo Zoloto, it kind of just reaffirmed this idea that it's a callback to that era. Now, near the middle of the song, I was kind of hoping it would have some kind of climax, and you know, we got just that when it has that "Oh, when you love somebody" kind of bridge section. So I really appreciated how that just kind of opens up at that section, and it's just really powerful. Now, I was a little confused with the overall tone of the song because at first, you know, when hearing the title of it, I'm thinking when you let somebody go, it's talking about a breakup. But near the end, it has a line that says, "But you're still with me now, I know." So I don't know if that means, you know, this is talking about the loss of someone's life, you know, talking about a loved one who passed away, or it could still be about a breakup and just talking about those experiences that you shared with them are still with you, and you know, you're kind of changed because of someone, regardless of if you're still together or not. And just looking at the song on a whole, I think it did a really good job of not using too many instruments, but making such a beautiful full sound. And there were a few instruments like the piano that I heard in there that I thought were just really well implemented and good touches in the song without being too much. Next up, we have Human Heart. Now, it's interesting because the voices in this song just move all together in unison, and it really reminds me of this kind of like vocoder sound, or even like a Bach chorale. Now, the content of this song just really reminded me of what we saw from Everyday Life. It was just real and deep and kind of just talked about these everyday life emotions. Now, I just think it's kind of funny because on an album about aliens and space, we have now 2 songs about humans. But I'm not like gonna make a huge fuss about it because I mean, humans exist in space. But just overall, this song is incredible. It's so beautiful and so heartwarming. But I absolutely love the space that is in between each line and how slow it moves. You know, I really don't say this very often about songs, but I think this tempo for the song is absolutely perfect. It really kind of draws you in and makes you stick around for the whole journey. The song is just so comforting and so warm that it's just a real pleasure to listen to. I mean, it's not a chore to hear all these voicings and just how they move so intricately and intentionally. I just really appreciated this song. And now to talk about People of the Pride. Now, it's introed with these horn parts, these kind of like strong horn parts that almost make it sound like it's introducing like a king or something. And having heard clips of this song before, this intro definitely came as a surprise to me in a good way. Now, after the horns come in, we hear Chris start to sing, but like in this telephone vocal, which was an interesting technique and something that I haven't really heard too much from Coldplay. So it was a nice thing to hear in this song. And then of course, probably the best part of the song comes when the guitar just kind of rips through and the kick starts. And this song just has a really high energy because of that part that I think is just really characteristic. And it's interesting because this is very much of a new direction for Coldplay. Like, we've never heard a song like this. So hearing this part for the first time was just very exciting. Now in verse 1, they do use another vocal effect. If you listen carefully in the background behind Chris's main vocals, there's this kind of like distorted, kind of demonic sounding voice. And I think that's very intentional because the song deals with kind of this oppressor figure, and I think that voice kind of characterizes that. It represents that kind of person. Now, before it goes back into that really cool guitar part, it has this like click sound and then goes into this EDM lead drop that I think is just super cool. It's a nice transition back into that. And honestly, a combination of that transition and just the overall tone of the guitar just makes me want so much more of this from Coldplay. I mean, it just has such an aggressive feel to it, and just that heavy rock swing fits super well with Coldplay. So I really want more of this song. Now, when it gets to the bridge section, it really reminds me of things that we heard in X and Y. Specifically, what came to mind when I heard this bridge was White Shadows. At the very end, it has that line that's like swimming in a sea of faces, you know, that part, it just really reminds me of that. So I don't know if it was a callback to that era, but I like to think of this album in part of just like a collection of everything that's happened in Coldplay's career. So I think of this section as a call to X and Y. Now, I just really wanted the song to be longer. Like, I felt like it did a really good job, and I loved the sound, I loved the aggressive, I loved the heavy rock kind of guitar, I just wanted it to progress a little more. And it wasn't a bad song by any means. I just want more of it because I love it so much. Like, I think this style works so well with Coldplay, and this song just gets a huge thumbs up from me. And yes, I can't tell you enough how much I want more of this. Next up, there is Biutyful. And this song had a very interesting intro. It kind of had this like 60s era intro from like a doo-wop song that had this very bizarre high vocal. But honestly, despite how weird it was, I actually kind of liked it. And then the song really started to pick up and the high vocals stuck with it. All the while, there's a lot of different colorful accents and just a wide variety of sounds. Now, again, in this song, we are seeing an acoustic guitar that just adds this really warm tone to it that I think really brings everything together. Now, halfway through the song, all we heard was this high voice. And I started to think that, you know, maybe the song was just this high voice. But then it introduces Chris's voice. And then another reoccurring theme that we've had from several songs on this album, there's this short bridge that kind of acts as a slow section right before it gets into that final chorus. Now, overall, I really enjoyed this song, and I thought it was really relaxing, similar to how I felt with Amazing Day. And that high voice didn't really annoy me at all. I know coming into this album, when we've heard clips before, people are like, oh, that high voice is annoying. Maybe you think it is, but I thought, you know, it kind of just added to the tone of the song. And speaking of that high voice, this actually isn't the first time we're hearing it. Back in Everyday Life, we heard a very similar sounding voice in Cry, Cry, Cry. Now, Cry, Cry, Cry is one of my personal favorite Coldplay songs of all time. It's just a beautiful waltz. But the thing that I wanted to mention about it is that Jacob Collier is mentioned in the acknowledgements for Cry, 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 and he's also mentioned in the acknowledgements for this album. But I'm pretty sure he was acknowledged for his work on Human Heart and not necessarily this song, but I'm wondering, you know, if he was on that song, maybe that was actually him singing those high voices in Cry, 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 as well as in this song. That's probably just a theory, and I don't know if that's true or not. If you have any information on that, feel free to comment below. Next up, we have MOTS 2, or Music of the Spheres 2, and it starts off with all these cheering noises, and then introduces this alien voice that honestly kind of scared me when I first heard it. Now, I'm sure that alien had all good intentions, but it definitely took me by surprise. Now, as far as what they are saying, I'm really not sure. It's probably speaking the language of MOTS 2, which is EL2, or Spheric, which is the language related to my universe. Now, if you're interested in the lore for all that, I'm sure that information will be released sometime, or maybe you've already decoded it yourself. Now, next up, we have the huge hit, My Universe. Now, this was the third single that we got from the album, and honestly, I loved every bit of it. I loved the collab with BTS, I loved the catchy chorus, and even the constant driving beat that just really kept my energy going. Now, the thing that surprised me the most about this song was the Korean lyrics sung by BTS that are just so deep and meaningful. And even the rap part itself just has a good rhythm, and it's easy to remember and follow. Now, I think overall this song is just produced super well. It has all these different instruments and different layers that just blend really well together, so this song has a huge thumbs up for me. Now, one last thing to mention about this song is that after the song is all over, or at least we think the song is all over, it kind of has this reprise, and it's interesting because that relates directly to the music video where these aliens cut off the music and they still are able to produce music and have fun. And I think that tone, that music and creativity and art and our higher power should be shared, is just such a great message, and I really think that's the true message of this album. So this is a great collab, it's a great song, and just everything works so well, so I love the song a lot. Next up, we have Infinity Sign, and it starts off with this sequencer, kind of like what we saw with Humankind. And then this kick comes in that lasts for the entire song. And then after about a minute or so listening to this beat and all these sounds and instruments, I started to wonder if this song would have any lyrics to it. And to my surprise, this song didn't really. It had these background voices, of course, but it didn't have like lyrics for a verse, chorus, pre-chorus, all that stuff. It was kind of more of a transition track, like an extended transition track. But I think the thing that most hardcore Coldplay fans are getting from the song is that it pays homage to the song Life is Beautiful. Now, if you've never heard this song before, Coldplay performed it live several years ago and had the audience chant "Ole, ole, ole, ole" along with it. Now, obviously that is seen in this song, and it's kind of just a nice reminder of it, a nice tribute to that song. Now, obviously it doesn't have the full lyrics and all that, but it does, you know, pay tribute to it in a way. Now, overall, I really liked this song. Like, it kind of reminds me of Above and Beyond or Cubby, and I would honestly love an entire album like this where I could just put on while I'm being productive or working out. Now, although it's pretty consistent the whole way through, this song does take a lot of different directions with different instruments and vocal parts that just have a nice complex but smooth energy to it. So Coldplay, just know that I'll be waiting for the entire album inspired by Infinity Sign. And last but absolutely not least, we have the song Coloratura. Now, there is not enough time in this video for me to express how impressive this song is. Honestly, the Space Orchestra is a true masterpiece, and I'm pretty sure it brought together the Coldplay community because everyone loves this song. The song starts off with this orchestral tuning that eventually leads into a ballad of Chris singing along with a piano, where there's this fantastic, just unusual chord progression. But in the song, there's just so much of a story with all the different motifs and just diversity between all the sections. It's just really impressive. There's a ballad section, a slow rock section, orchestral parts, a swing section, and that swing section is actually one of my favorites. Probably second compared to the chime part. But speaking of that swing section, that part is actually in the time signature 5/4, which is just mind-blowing. But honestly, that is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what a musical masterpiece this song is. Now, I can talk about this song for a long time, and actually I already did a musical analysis of it, and if you're interested in hearing more about this and how amazing I think it is, definitely check out this video right here. And now just my thoughts on the album as a whole. So we had songs that had this new age 80s pop, songs that featured an acoustic guitar and strong kick, unique transition tracks, slow ballads, hard rock, and even a space symphony. So without a doubt, this album is super diverse. And as I mentioned before, it's really interesting to hear how it kind of calls back from previous albums and previous works. And this really is kind of a culmination of what we've heard from Coldplay in their history, in their career. Now, despite there being two huge singles like My Universe and Higher Power, I personally think that Coloratura is the real gem in this album. Now, I was also just really surprised at how much I liked Humankind. Possibly, like I said before, because it just brought me back to this sentimentality of the Viva La Vida era. But overall, I just can't tell you how pleased I am with this album. You know, other than its diversity, I kind of had an idea of what to expect going into this album, and it wasn't exactly how I expected, but it surprised me in such a good way. Like, for example, Infinity Sign wasn't an actual full-length song. It was just a long transition track, but I loved it so much. I, didn't expect to hear Humankind in the way it was. I had these ideas of what it would sound like from the clips that we heard earlier, but the way it sounded was better than what was expected. So I just am overall super pleased with this album. And I really think that this album just really showcased what Coldplay is capable of, and obviously that's a lot. Like, they had such a diverse song list, like all these different styles, but I was really happy to see that they were able to play new styles, like things that we haven't heard Coldplay do before, and I'm just really interested to see where they go from here. Now, it's not confirmed, but this is titled Music of the Spheres Volume 1, and there's kind of this expectation that there's going to be 2 more albums just like this, obviously different songs, but following possibly the same theme. Now, I am 100% for this ride. Like, I enjoyed this album so much that I'm ready for part 2, so hopefully that's coming soon. But in the meantime, I'm gonna be super satisfied listening to this album. And that, my friends, is my review of the full album. Now, I plan on breaking down each song individually a little bit more, so definitely expect to see more videos just like this. And if you're interested in that, definitely subscribe so you don't miss out. And definitely comment below letting me know what kind of videos you want to see. This is just the very beginning of these Music of the Spheres videos, so I hope you look forward to that. Now, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.